So the art pieces I show you to discuss the Enlightenment, I categorize as part of the new morality. Because what I see when I look at the Enlightenment as a thought process, right? And I look at neoclassicism as an art movement, it's just steeped through, right? Imbued with morality. It makes sense because if you go back and look at the Rococo, obviously there was a lot of immorality, very immoral behavior, right? Stuff that's not moral. So a lot of probably cheating on your spouse and running off and frolicking in the forest. So it makes perfect sense that the contrast, of course, is going to be a moral sense, right? Or a new moral compass that comes into play. And I start off with these works by Greuze because I wanted to kind of have you in your mind go back to Fragonard's The Music Lesson, where the teacher was staring at that young girl's breasts, right? Was staring at her bust as she's playing the piano. And to me, these paintings are a reaction to that. They're a reaction to this sense of corruption that I think many saw in Rococo beliefs, right? That there was no rules, there was no, the fine, upstanding behavior. There, who wants their music teacher scoping out their daughter, right? So Greuze, he takes things in a new direction where he's trying to stress morality, especially amongst young girls. And when I think about these paintings, the way I think they probably were used is they were probably bought by parents and hung in young girls' rooms to morally instruct them. Why dead birds? Well, think symbolism again. They're pets. You'll notice that there's these little cages, right, in each piece. And the girls either didn't take care of them, didn't feed them, didn't water them, or maybe picked them up and held them too tightly and killed them. You'll notice in both of these, the birds are very dead. And it's not literal like we think it is, right? There's something behind this about morality. What we think Greuze was trying to communicate here is that young girls, if they're not taught properly, if they're not given, as they say down the South, right, home learning, that they will not know how to behave, right? They will not know how to comport themselves, and they will make bad mistakes. And so they need to have their fragility understood. They need to have guidance, right? And you shouldn't leave them alone without instruction, or these are the bad things that will happen. You should keep your eye on your children, especially your daughters. So ladies, as I said, the gender reading of this time is sort of hard for women, I think. It would have been a pretty heavy time, I think, if you were a woman, because everything's sort of, given to women through the lens of morality. Now, here's another Greuze painting that I think speaks a lot to morality as well. And it's one of my favorites, not just by Greuze, but in general, because it always makes me chuckle a little bit. Broken eggs. And so on the surface, it looks, again, pretty straightforward. Someone has gone to the market, they've dropped the eggs, boo-hoo, bad day, right? But there's more to it than that. So you'll notice in the painting we have four characters, right? We have the older lady, we have the younger girl, we have the sort of young gentleman, and we have the little boy. And you'll notice that the older lady's like sort of holding on, gripping the man, right, the gentleman, and pointing to the eggs. And the young girl just sort of sits there looking despondent and kind of out of it. She's just sort of glancing at the ground, and this sort of seems like she's like half asleep or something. And the little boy looks mischievous, right? He's kind of over there we're like, what is he doing, right? Looks a little mischievous. Now, again, on the surface, she seems to just be saying, you went to the market and dropped the eggs. But if we put all these kind of moral signs and symbols together, what we can kind of come to understand based on the time period is that the eggs symbolize virginity, the breaking of something, the breaking of the egg. And we assume that what has happened is the guy and the girl, and the older lady who's probably the mother or grandmother of this girl has found out. So she's holding him accountable. And do you notice he's kind of acting kind of clueless? He's like scratching his head like, what? She'll know she's holding on tight. She's like, this is what you've done. And the girl just, again, seems like, I'll just take my medicine. I'll just sit here and be yelled at, kind of thing. Um, so again, what we think is happening is this idea of lost virginity, and the older lady saying, someone has to pay. Where I think there's even more background to this is that I think what the old lady is saying is that it's happened before. Because where else did that little boy come from? Really, up until the early 1900s, what would often happen in families if a young girl got pregnant is that an older family member would fake a pregnancy. It's well documented. So if a young girl, 13, 14, 15, 16, unwed, right, got pregnant, often the older mother, who sometimes was in her 40s, 50s, would fake a miraculous pregnancy, right? And they'd ship the daughter off somewhere else, right, to relatives somewhere else, and the mother would just fake this whole thing, and then, oh, what a blessing. And meanwhile, this is, if you think about it, the young girl's son, but of course would be being passed off as her mother's son. So the little boy, to me, Gruz makes the old lady really old to make sure you're very clear that there's no way she could have had this little boy. That has to be the young girl's son. So it's almost like the old lady's like, you already got her in trouble once, and we tried to fix that. Now you're going to have to marry her, right? This is just the way it's going to be. So again, there seems to be a lot of morality at work in these pieces, suggesting again what's the best thing for the fabric of society, right? What holds it together? We can't have any broken eggs. The final Gruz that I'll show you is the prodigal son. And I like showing you this one because then I contrast it with Rembrandt's version, which is very different. In the prodigal son that Gruz creates, you'll notice the blame is heavy. So where in Rembrandt's version, it's all about forgiveness. No, there's no forgiveness to be had here in Gruz's world. Notice that the son has returned, but the father is on his deathbed. And the rest of the family is all gathered around, like, dramatically reacting to the situation. I mean, if you want drama, this is a dramatic painting. It works very well with Caravaggio-esque technique, if you get my drift. I also love the dog. The dog's kind of sniffing at him, like, who are you? And again, dogs are about fidelity. So if the dog doesn't recognize you, you're in a bad situation. And the mom is just the blamingest mom you've ever seen. She's like, look what you've done to your father, so much blame. And then my favorite is the sister over on the left side, who's so distraught. She's ignoring her own son. Oh, like he made her be a bad mother, right? So, oh God, all this that he's brought on his family, so again, it reads very, very differently than Rembrandt. So you want a side by side, here you go, where Rembrandt's like all like, oh, I forgive you, the love and the forgiveness and the warmth, and even the colors mimic that. And then you go to Gruz and it's like cold and alienated and just so much blame. And again, I think, what do you expect from a culture that's about morality and like, this is what you do that's right and this is what you do that's wrong? I'm not surprised. So again, we love compare and contrast in art history, and this is a great one to look at. The final artist I want to show you is Chardin. And Chardin is actually known mostly for his still lifes, but I'm not going to show you any because they're not really all that filled with symbolism or anything really interesting to talk about. Not in my opinion. They're great, for their own reasons, but not for how I really want to frame our discussion on the Enlightenment. But again, if you like still life, right, you can go Google some of Chardin's still lifes. I'm showing you here his piece, Grace at Table, and then also The Young Schoolmistress, because I wanted you to see how Chardin is kind of picking up on that Enlightenment value of what we call the moral mother, or the moral woman, I guess we can even say. And what was really being pitched to women is, you don't want to be that Rococo woman who is running around being sexy and sleazy and, that's not good. You want to be the caring mother who helps her children learn how to say grace before a meal. You're inspiring, such lovely girls who grew up to be good mothers as well. Or the schoolmistress, the idea of a young girl going into the profession of teaching and spending her time with children, shaping and molding their minds. All of this can be either viewed as like, oh wow, or really treacly. It's how you go at it, I guess. But there's this whole sense of the roles that women should play. Um, Based on what I know about this time period in the Industrial Revolution, you had a lot of women actually leaving the countryside, the farms, the rural areas, and going to the cities to work in factories. But a lot of them couldn't really make it in the factories. It was too hard of work. So they actually became prostitutes. So I think Chardin was very aware of this issue and maybe was saying to women, don't leave your rural families, don't leave the farm, stay at home, right? Go be a schoolmistress, get married, have kids, right? That's better for you than trying to go make this life for yourself in the city that may turn to corruption and ruin. So again, on the surface, they may look, kind of simple, but based on the context of the time period, I think there's a lot more that Chardin was trying to offer up to us regarding, the message of these kind of pieces. So I love seeing these ones and thinking about these moral mothers and these moral women and their roles they had to play. And then just two more to conclude, Blowing Bubbles and House of Cards. So thinking about morality and what people had to offer society, I think he did these works to say that we all at some point have to put foolish games aside, right? We have to leave foolish games in our youth and grow up. So this idea of children playing these games, but if you think about it, they're either time wasters, like building houses of cards, or they're about fragility, like the blowing bubbles. They're not meant to last. And so I think what Chardin was trying to say is that if we want to be serious citizens, we have to move on from these childish things and we have to leave them behind. In that, in a sense, everything is fragile, everything ends, so you better make sure your contribution is something serious. So I love looking at these works too. When we talk next time, we're going to look at neoclassicism. And of course, you're going to see some connections to Enlightenment values in neoclassical art as well. So again, I'll sort of explain neoclassicism as a pure art movement that's influenced by Enlightenment, but again, a little bit different, right, in its approach and its values.